Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. As everyone is still getting signed in, we're just going to go over a few housekeeping items. Please do think of any questions throughout the webinar and direct them to the Q&A section. We will do our best to answer these throughout and of course at the end of the webinar. We'll also be recording this webinar and we will share this recording with you as soon as the webinar is finished. If we don't get to answer all of your questions, we will follow up with you afterwards. And reaching out to info@jamf.com will get you in contact with somebody at Jamf quickly. So, welcome and thanks for tuning into this webinar. My name is Anthony Darlow and I'm a consulting engineer here at Jamf focused on helping our education customers and solutions. Today, I'd like to talk to you about ensuring Apple devices that you deploy in your school have the correct impact and drive meaningful classroom outcomes with the help of Jamf. Before we do, let's set the scene a little bit and discuss the differences between technology for IT skills versus a learning enhancement. Teaching IT skills is what we'd class as the traditional approach, focusing on specific skills like presentations, word processing, spreadsheets and coding. This is typically, and I say this as I class myself as an IT admin, this is where IT admins really focus when it comes to how devices are managed. However, to really have that transformational impact and drive meaningful outcomes, the technology that we deploy and offer to our students and teachers needs to go beyond the traditional IT approach. Our devices need to support learning in various subjects and personalize the educational experiences of our students. As such, devices need to be flexible enough to support a number of factors and tick boxes for multiple stakeholders. For IT admins, it's important that devices are managed in a way that is efficient, effective, and in line with policies. Many of the things that you see here are tools that as IT admins we would want to achieve or use. But that's just part of the picture. Once the devices are configured, we need to provide teachers with the tools to engage our learners, the opportunities to empower students to take charge of their learning, and all in a secure and safe way. And this has to be done in a way that's easy to use, reliable, and has a purpose. If the technology is too difficult to use, the adoption won't be there. Why would a teacher choose something that's harder to use than what the way that they currently do it? Same, if the technology is great, but it's hit and miss whether or not it'll work, and a teacher can't rely on it, why will students or teachers opt to use it? And finally, technology can be great, but if there isn't a way to provide purpose or provide the tools for a purpose, then it's technology for technology's sake, which often doesn't bring out the desired outcomes. So today, I'd like to take you through what I call a day in the life of, where we follow a student, whose name is Jack, from enrolling his device, using his device at school and in the classroom, and finally, how we can extend learning at home so it can continue to have an impact. So, like any good story, we'll start at the beginning with enrolling and setting up a device. In our day in the life of, we'll follow a student, as I've said, whose name is Jack, and his experience with his iPad. So first things first, this setup could be done at home or at school. It really doesn't matter, and it will differ between school to school. However, whenever we turn on an iPad, we have to do the same few different things, and that is to select a language and the location of the device, and then connect to Wi-Fi. That's what Jack's doing here at the moment. Once connected to Wi-Fi, Jack's iPad activates with Apple, and this is where things start to look a little bit different and where Jamf really starts to take over. This is what the remote management bit talks about here. Notice how Jack can't skip this, so we know that Jamf will configure his device. Next, Jack is asked to log in to enroll. His school IT department have decided that they need Jack to log in with his Microsoft credentials, and has linked Jamf School with Microsoft. What this means for Jack is that he just needs to use the same username and password as he uses for all other school services. He hasn't got to remember anything new. Once Jack has signed in and proven that he is indeed a pupil at the school, he has linked his iPad directly to himself and it's ready to enroll. Jack's iPad starts to get the configurations from Jamf School without Jack needing to do anything too challenging. At this point, Jack is asked about location services, but this is the only window that we'll see. If you set up an iPad before, you'll know that there are a whole bunch of windows that you normally have to click through, but Jack's School has decided to skip all of the non-essential windows for a smoother and quicker onboarding. Once Jack lands on the home screen, this looks pretty standard, but if you keep a close eye on things, you'll notice that things start to jump around. Some of the Apple stock apps like Tips or Stocks, apps that aren't really relevant to a student, start to disappear. The wallpaper quickly changes based on what Jack's school has configured it to, and this is an easy way, for example, to spot that it's a student device over a teacher device, for example, if you use different wallpapers for different devices. For this next bit, we've sped up the video for a bit for the sake of time, but you'll see a number of core apps installed on the device. Again, Jack has not had to do anything for this to start, and IT has not had any hands-on time with the device. There was no requirement for Apple accounts or passwords for these apps to install. Now, notice how I said core apps. I was very specific with this. These are apps that are business critical and needed by everybody on a daily basis. We all know there's a saying, there's an app for that, but the idea of app overload is a real thing too. Many schools make the mistake of installing a whole bunch of apps on everybody's device, even if they never use them or are really targeted for a different group of students. In some cases, schools deploy a number of apps that serve the same purpose, but install them to give students the choice of which tool they want to use. As a quick example, Pages, Word, and Docs. They're all word processors, but we want to give the student maybe the choice of which one to use. Now, not only does this cause pages and pages of apps, it also takes up valuable space on the device. Installing a huge number of apps at enrollment also means that the student could be waiting a long time before the device is ready to go. In Jack's school, they have decided that they are going to just install those core apps that everybody really needs, as well as the Jamf student app. This gives Jack the ability to install more school sanctions apps as and when he needs, or to make that choice between, say, Pages, Words, and Docs, without needing to install all three on his device, for him to only have used one of them. As well as giving Jack a list of apps he can install from his school custom app store, Jack's school has also created these collections that we saw before. These are a group of apps that are related to certain subjects, tasks, or even related to each other. For example, we saw a category called Create that has a host of drawing and design style apps, whereas Microsoft is a collection of the Office tools. Jack is able to download apps individually, or click the entire collection and hit download on all of the apps there, so that he can have the apps that he needs as in when he requires them. Again, notice how Jack does not need to enter any sort of password or Apple account in order to install apps from Jamf Student. Okay, so Jack has successfully enrolled and set up his device with Jamf and a zero-touch deployment. And by that, we mean that Jack drove the entire workflow and IT had zero hands-on time with the device. However, the setup of the device is just the start of Jack's experience with his iPad. So let's see what happens now that Jack has his iPad set up and goes to start the school day. Well, first notice that Jack has installed some personal apps on his device, as this is something his school has agreed on as part of this deployment. Now, I know that's not going to be the case for every school, but that's a decision that Jack's school has taken to help students take ownership and responsibility of their devices. You'll see Jack has downloaded things like games, social media apps, as well as video apps like Netflix and Disney+, all of which could be, and most likely will be, distractions during the school day. So let's start the school day and see what Jack's experience is. The school is able to send additional configuration to his iPad when the school day starts. This limits the apps available for use while at school and ensures that the iPad is suitable as a learning tool without the distractions of the personal apps, or potentially even iMessage or FaceTime. It happened quite quickly, so I've highlighted where some of these personal apps like Instagram were before the school day started. The thing is, Jack is a child, and we all know children try to be clever and get around these kind of rules. So now that Jack doesn't have any games on his iPad, the first thing he tries to do is to go and get games through the internet. But as we can see, Jack has been blocked from going to games websites. This is because, as part of the enrollment and setup, Jack's school also deployed Jamf Safe Internet. Safe Internet is our on-device content filter-based content filter, which ensures that students can only access appropriate content wherever they learn. This could be as simple as stopping games or social media sites, to ensuring that students don't stumble upon inappropriate websites or images via Google image search. But just to point out again, Jack didn't need to open up an app or set anything up to have this configured on the device, and the IT department didn't need hands-on with the device either. Now that the school day has started and any distractions from Jack's iPad has been removed, let's take a look at what his experience is in one of his lessons and bring his teacher's iPad in too. On the teacher's iPad, you'll see something called Jamf Teacher. The Jamf Teacher app is all about classroom management and managing those student devices as part of their lesson. It's a tool to give the teachers the ability to control, focus, and drive learning of their devices. You'll see here at the start of the lesson, Jack's teacher was about to lock his iPad into an attention screen, showing that the lesson is about to start and that they should pay attention to the front of the class. While this message is active, Jack cannot do anything on his device. With distractions removed and the teacher knowing that students can't do anything with their iPad, they're able to give instructions to the teachers to start the students to start the lesson. When Jack's teacher is ready to start the first task, they can unlock the iPad, and they can do this with just a few taps, making it super easy for his teacher to apply and clear restrictions as the lesson develops and as the tools are needed. As well as having the ability to set things on an ad hoc basis, Jack's teacher can define things and settings before the lesson so that they can focus in on the learning with even fewer steps and taps. Even though personal apps have been removed from Jack's device at the start of the school day, his teacher wants to remove further distractions and suggest the apps needed to complete the task in just their lesson. The Jamf Teacher app enables Jack's teacher to perform this in just their classroom without needing to put in the IT ticket. Now, for this lesson, Jack has access to the tools and apps needed for this class task, and is able to do this at his own pace because all of those apps are available to him from the very start. Now, the Jamf Teacher app is actually best used and paired alongside the Apple Classroom app, which can still be used to open up things like apps or guide students to particular websites, as well as view student screens or mirror student screens to Apple TVs for them. Now, in addition to app control and attention screen, Jack's teacher is also able to manage a bunch of device settings during their lesson with the Jamf Teacher app. For example, if Jack is usually allowed to use spell check on his iPad, but the task set in the class today needs to assess Jack's spelling, the teacher can restrict this functionality, again, just for this task or just for this lesson. But it doesn't stop with just spell check either. This could be other device functionalities, such things as Apple Intelligence, that is a great tool when needed, but also might be considered as something that isn't needed on the device, for assessments and things like that as well. So when the lesson or task is over, Jack's teacher has the ability to either have the iPad return to the school time setup after a certain amount of time, or clear their classroom settings whenever is needed. Now that Jack's iPad is back to the school time setup, he is able to move on to the next lesson, and the next teacher has the ability to guide that lesson in the exact same way if they want and need. So, we've seen what happens during setup, when the school day starts, and what Jack's experience is during a lesson. That's not the end of the story though. If we're really going to look at a day in the life of, we need to consider what happens after the school day finishes and when Jack goes home with his iPad. So what does Jack see at the end of the school day? When the school day ends, those additional configurations that were added to the device are removed. That means that Jack has access to his personal apps restored and can now play his games or watch a little bit of Disney+. The thing is, if Jack's school has decided that the iPad goes home, that likely means that they want Jack to use the iPad to complete homework and continue to learn at home, as well as being able to use it as a personal device. And Jack's mum and dad also want to make sure that he's actually done his homework before he starts to smash his best score on Fortnite or Candy Crush or whatever it might be. That's why Jack's parents has installed the Jamf Parent app on their device. The Jamf Parent app is very similar to the Jamf Teacher app in that it enables parents to further manage their child's device whilst it is at home and to help guide the learning. So Jack's mum or dad, they want him to spend 90 minutes doing his homework once he returns from school. Jack's school has already communicated to his parents the apps that are required to complete the homework task, and they are now selecting these apps. But the great thing is that the parent's device doesn't need to have those apps installed in order to select the apps that they want to lock Jack's iPad into. Once they've selected the amount of time they want these settings to last and the apps that they want to display, Jack's iPad is ready for his homework session. And as you can see from earlier, this is very similar to the experience Jack has in the classroom, where the apps that are available to him for a particular task are reduced, and Jack then just has the apps that he requires to complete his task. So Jack is about to start off his homework session the same way he always does, by checking his email. Now, he notices that he has an email from IT support, and it says that it's urgent. The email explains that the school has had some sort of breach and that he needs to reset his password by following a link. Given that it sounds urgent and sounds important, and because he can't contact IT because he's at home, Jack taps the link to reset his password. Jack expects, like most of us would, that they'd end up at maybe his Microsoft site since that's what they use at his school. But actually, the email was not from his school's IT support team. The email was a fish that was looking to get Jack to give up his username and password. Now, we know from earlier in the school day that Jack's iPad has also got Jamf Safe Internet deployed. Now, as well as being a content filter, Safe Internet also protects students against web-based threats such as web-based malware, spam, and as we can see here, phishing attacks. Now, of course, had Jack followed this link and entered his username and password, if Safe Internet wasn't on the device, the likelihood is he'd have given those credentials to a threat actor, and who knows what would have happened with them there. So, it's a great thing that Jack's school thought not just about managing the devices, but also how to further secure them no matter where the student is. So back to the homework. While Jack is doing his homework, he'd really like to listen to some music or those kind of things, a bit more chill because he's at home. So Jack's parents can add or remove additional apps during the app lock period without needing to end that session and restart it again. So also if Jack's parents forgot maybe to add an app for his homework task, that can be added as we need to. And it's super easy to amend this for Jack's parents. And let's face it, having some background music might just be what Jack needs to get his homework done. Now, we obviously had that countdown timer, those 90 minutes that we wanted to give Jack to complete his task. But if Jack finishes his homework before the timer, his mum or dad can disable the app lock, which then returns the iPad back to the personal use before the timer runs out. Or you can use the timer and it will return to that state automatically once the timer runs down. Now, Jack's parents are okay with Jack using iMessage and FaceTime, which are allowed in personal time. However, if they weren't, the parent app enables them to disable these in personal time, as well as the school disabling them during the school time. This is actually really useful for Jack's school IT department, since they have a number of parents wanting their children to use iMessage and FaceTime, and a number that don't. Ordinarily, this would have required the IT team to have had lots of different groups to allow certain things at certain times for certain people. It's a lot of workload for this. Instead, Jack's school simply enables the apps during this after-school hours and have advised the parents that don't want their children to use FaceTime and iMessage to disable them using the parent app. Now, Jack's parent wants to set that homework session that we've just seen every day at the same time. Using device rules, Jack's parents can configure these settings once and they will trigger every day. Using the parent app to guide Jack's learning is great, but Jack's mum and dad also want to use the parent app to enforce sort of house usage rules. For example, they might not want Jack to watch Netflix or Disney Plus after 9 p.m, but they don't mind him reading on his iPad. So although this rule doesn't relate to his learning, it's a useful tool for Jack's parents to help him manage his screen time. So let's just take a look at that parent setting that I've just applied called bedtime. First, the parents will name the rule and then choose the apps that they want to make available to Jack. In this case, we're going to select just the clock app. And if there's only one selected app, it locks the iPad into that app. Next, they select the days and the times they want this rule to automatically apply and remove. And then there is no need to go and set this rule every day. It's set and forget and easy to configure. Now, the thing is, you might be asking, why lock into the clock app? Well, simply, during the hours of 10 p.m, to when Jack wakes up in the morning, so 6:37 or whatever time that might be, the only thing that Jack can do with his iPad is watch the time tick by which you'd hope that would encourage him to go to sleep. And of course, having access to the clock means that he can set an alarm for the next morning and get up, get into school, and do this all over again. So, as you can see, it's not just about managing devices with a full stop. It's about ensuring that the devices are managed to satisfy the needs of IT, whilst having the tools available to students, teachers, and parents so that they can provide the most impact, whether they're at school, in a specific classroom, or at home. And if done successfully, as IT professionals, you become the hero of the story, not a blocker, but an enabler, providing a solution that is easy, reliable, and with purpose. And it doesn't stop with iPad. If you use macOS as well, we could be telling a very similar story. With simple onboarding driven by either the student or teachers or provisioned by IT beforehand. Making resources available on demand without passwords, without hassle, and approved by IT. And keeping users focused on appropriate content online and protected from network threats, regardless of where they are. With macOS, we can even take this further. not only by protecting against network threats, but on-device endpoint threats as well. Or temporarily giving more privileges to chosen users to perform additional tasks without the need for an IT ticket, reducing IT's workload, not adding to it. This is deploying devices with a purpose. And at Jamf, we have the tools to make this a reality in your environment. If this is something that you're looking to achieve in your school, then we have some things to help you along the way. Firstly, we have our Jamf 240 training course. Taken remotely, the Jamf 240 guides you through the basics and helps you set up your Jamf school environments for success. Join the Jamf Nation community and connect with like-minded admins and educators over at the Education Hub. If you find yourself in a particular situation, there's a good chance another community member has been there too, and everybody is always willing to offer their advice and expertise. And finally, why not get certified as a Jamf educator? Through an online course, learn more about the Jamf Teacher app and how to use it in your classrooms. And if you are an admin, there is a separate task on how you can support your educators in the classroom with the best configuration and deployment workflows. So with that, thank you very much for listening.